The Villisca axe murders. 8 victims. 0 answers. Iowa, the land of endless cornfields and small, peaceful towns where everyone knows your name. But sometimes that very quietness conceals the darkest secrets. Tonight, we aren't telling multiple stories. We are telling only one. A true story that happened over a century ago, but its echo still haunts every corner, every mirror, and every axe blow. In the Villisca murder house.
Cold. Why is it so cold? I remember it being June. June in Villisca is always warm. Josiah, my husband, he always opened the bedroom window just a crack to let in the night breeze. But now there's no breeze, only stillness as heavy as a thick blanket. And darkness. Where am I? This is my home. I recognize the familiar scent of the oak bed frame my father built for us as a wedding gift. I recognize the curtains I sewed with my own hands. But something is wrong. An unnatural silence. The children Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and my sweet little Paul, they're always up before me. Their feet pattering on the floorboards are always the first sound of the day. But today there is nothing. I try to call my husband's name, but no sound comes out. I try to sit up, but my body no longer obeys. I can only drift, floating in my own room, and that's when I see it. Reflected in the wardrobe mirror is not me. It's a white cloth. Someone has covered all the mirrors in my house. Why? Why would they do that? It was only yesterday. It feels like only yesterday, Sunday, June 9th, 1912, was a perfect day. The Iowa sun was brilliant, and our town of Villisca was living through its most peaceful summer days. I am Josiah Moore, 39 years old. My life was simple and happy. My greatest joy was my family. My husband, Josiah, a hardworking man, ran his farm implement business with great success. He was strong and dependable, the rock of my life. We had 4 wonderful children. Herman, 11, with his father's eyes, always curious about the world. Catherine, 10, my sunshine, with golden hair and a smile that could melt the harshest winter. Then came the 2 little ones, 7-year-old Boyd and 5-year-old Paul. They were 2 peas in a pod, always up to some mischief that kept the house filled with laughter. Our home at 508 East 2nd Street was not grand, but it held all our love. Every morning, I'd awake to the smell of coffee Josiah had brewed and the sound of the children fighting over the last piece of toast. Life just went on like that, a series of ordinary days, and I once thought it would last forever. Yesterday was a little more special. Catherine had invited her 2 dear friends, the Stillinger sisters, 8-year-old Ina and 12-year-old Lena, to sleep over after the service at the Presbyterian church. I was delighted. The more children's laughter in the house, the happier I felt. We prepared dinner together, went to the church together for the Children's Day program. I can still picture Catherine and the 2 Stillinger girls on stage, little angels in their pure white dresses, singing their hearts out. Josiah and I sat in the pews, watching our children, our hearts swelling with pride. It was a perfect evening, a perfect memory, the last memory of peace. We returned home around 10 o'clock at night. The sky was clear, full of stars. The children were still chattering about the service, about the songs and the compliments. The air was fresh, and the town had already fallen asleep. Everything seemed as it should be. But as we walked our familiar path home, I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine. It was just for a moment. I turned to look, but the road behind us was empty, lit only by the faint glow of oil lamps from distant houses. Josiah took my hand. "Are you cold, Sarah?" I just smiled and shook my head, telling myself it was just my imagination. People do that sometimes, creating unseen fears in the darkness. Once home, I prepared milk and cookies for the children. Catherine and the Stillinger girls were whispering in the living room, sharing little girls' secrets, I suppose. My 4 children, after a long day, quickly fell into their beds. Herman and Catherine were upstairs. The 2 little ones, Boyd and Paul, slept in our room downstairs. The Stillinger sisters were in the downstairs guest room. By 10 o'clock, the whole house was quiet. Josiah checked the doors, as he always did. Everything was locked up tight. I finished cleaning the kitchen, placing the empty milk glasses in the sink. As I extinguished the last oil lamp in the living room, the house was plunged into darkness and silence. A silence I once cherished, but that night the silence felt different. It was heavier, thicker. As I lay down beside Josiah, I listened to the familiar sounds of the house, the ticking of the grandfather clock, the steady breathing of my husband and 2 small sons in the room. But mixed in with them, I thought I heard a strange noise. It was so quiet, almost imperceptible. Perhaps it was just the old house settling in the night, as Josiah always said. I tried to push it from my mind. I closed my eyes, thinking about tomorrow, about Sunday breakfast, about the simple plans of an ordinary family. I had no idea that tomorrow would never come for us. The first crack had appeared in our peace, and it came from a single creak on the floor, a sound that didn't belong. The sound of death tiptoeing in. The darkness in my dream was not like ordinary darkness. It had a shape. It had weight. It had a scent, the smell of damp earth from behind the house and iron. I don't know how long I was asleep. Sleep came quickly, a welcome escape from that vague sense of unease. But then I was pulled from it. Not by a loud noise, but by a change in the air. The room seemed to have dropped several degrees. Someone was standing in our room. I could feel their presence. A tall shadow stood at the foot of our bed, motionless, just watching us. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake Josiah awake, but my body was frozen. My throat was constricted. This is just a dream, I told myself. Just a terrible nightmare. But then the shadow moved. Slowly, deliberately. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Josiah. In the dim moonlight filtering through the window, I saw something glint in his hand. Something long and heavy. That sound, I will never forget it. The dry whoosh through the air, followed by a wet, sickening thud. Once, then again. Josiah didn't even have time to cry out. His body convulsed beside me, then fell still. Absolute terror finally broke my paralysis, but it was too late. The shadow's eyes turned to me. I couldn't see his face, only 2 empty, soulless sockets in the darkness. And then I saw nothing but the gleaming blade of the axe as it came down. But the horror didn't stop there. Even as I left my body, I could still feel. I could hear his footsteps, heavy footsteps leaving our room, heading towards the living room where the 2 Stillinger girls were sleeping. Then those footsteps went up the stairs towards my precious children. Herman and Catherine, I heard those sounds repeat, over and over. I screamed in silence, begging him to stop. But he didn't stop. He went from room to room, a phantom of death, carrying my family's own axe, and extinguished every flame of life in my home. He turned our house into a tomb. And the feeling of isolation, of helplessness, while having to witness it all, that was true hell. Dawn, the light of Monday, June 10th, tried to creep through the curtains, but the light brought no warmth. It only made the coldness and the silence in this house more apparent. There were no birds singing, no children's laughter, only the silence of death. I floated through my own home, an invisible prisoner. I saw it all. 8 still bodies lying in their beds, the white sheets now stained crimson. I saw Josiah's axe left carelessly in the downstairs guest room. Near it, 2 slabs of raw bacon I had bought the day before. The killer's sick joke. Then I heard the knocking. It was Mary Peckham, our neighbor. She was worried because she hadn't seen us outside. She called our names, but no one answered. She called Ross, Josiah's brother. I saw Ross running over, his face etched with concern. He had a key. He put the key in the lock. The metallic clinking sounded deafening in the silence. The door opened. Ross stepped inside. He called out, "Joe? Sarah?" Silence answered him. He walked through the living room and peered into the guest room where the Stillinger girls lay. That scream, it tore through the deadly silence. It was the scream of a man who had just seen hell. I saw Ross run out of the house, his face white as a sheet, stammering for the town marshal. The breaking point wasn't when the axe fell. It was this moment. The moment the outside world learned of the unspeakable crime committed within these walls. The moment our home, a sanctuary, was officially turned into a crime scene. The news spread like wildfire. The entire town of Villisca descended upon our street. They stood outside, staring at our house with morbid curiosity and fear. My home had become a monster, and we were trapped inside it. After Ross's scream, the world rushed in, but they didn't bring justice. They brought chaos. Hundreds of curious townspeople poured into my home before the police could stop them. They walked through the rooms, touched the furniture, stared at us. They destroyed any evidence, trampling any slim hope of justice with their own feet. I, a silent ghost, witnessed it all. I watched the investigation begin and quickly hit a dead end. They suspected so many. There was Reverend George Kelly, a strange man who had been at the church service that night. He even confessed, but his confession was full of inconsistencies, and he later recanted. I looked into his eyes and saw only a troubled soul, not a cold-blooded killer. Then there was State Senator Frank F. Jones, Josiah's business rival. People whispered of business feuds, of rumors that Josiah was having an affair with his daughter-in-law. I saw the hatred in Jones's eyes when he looked towards my house, but is hatred enough to turn a man into a monster? They even investigated a man named William Blackie Mansfield, a supposed killer for hire. So many theories, so much speculation, but not a single piece of concrete evidence. 2 trials were held for Reverend Kelly, but both ended without a conviction. No one was ever found guilty. The one who took the life of my husband, my 4 children, of 2 innocent little girls, walked free. He vanished back into the darkness, leaving behind a question that would never be answered. Years passed. The house fell into disrepair. The paint peeled, the garden grew wild, but we remained. Josiah, the children, the Stillinger girls, and I, we are bound to this place by injustice, by a pain that has never faded. Our haunting became the house's haunting. They say our house is haunted. They come here with their recorders and cameras, hoping to hear our whispers, to see our shadows pass. They come seeking a thrill, but they don't understand. The real horror isn't the spirits who are trapped here. The real horror is that a man can walk into a house full of sleeping children and slaughter them all for no reason, with no explanation. The real horror is that he walked away and was never punished. So if you ever pass through Villisca, Iowa, and see our house standing there silent and dark, remember that we are still here, still waiting for an answer that will likely never come. Be careful of the darkness, because sometimes it wears a human face.
Over 100 years later, the Villisca axe murders remains one of the most chilling and baffling cold cases in American crime history. The killer was never found. His motive remains a mystery. The house at 508 East 2nd Street is now a paranormal tourist destination, attracting those brave enough to confront the tragedy that occurred there. But as the story you just heard suggests, some stories never truly end. They just wait in the silence. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Horror Stories. If this story left you unable to sleep, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the darkness. Which state's terrifying tales do you want us to explore next? Let us know. Until next time, check your locks.